false teachers are downright wicked. Hey, you can't talk like that. Hold the phone, Henrietta. Jesus did in Matthew 7. He called false prophets, false teachers, ravenous wolves. And last time I checked, ravenous wolves aren't so nice. You remember Marlon Perkins and Jim out on the safari and Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. That's the most current reference I have for an animal show. What would they do? They'd spy on nature to see how different animals, lower than human beings, at least we used to think so, how they behaved. Almost certainly you remember, if it isn't from Marlon Perkins, another animal show where a pack of wolves wants to eat a meal. They stumble across a pack of water buffalo. Who do they go after? Because these beasts are so massively big. How can a puny wolf take down a big water buffalo? Well, their first scheme is to try to separate the sick or the youth from the herd, jump all over them, maul them, take them down. They can handle something smaller or feeble. But if that option doesn't exist, they'll break one of the big water buffalo away from the herd, and then they employ their deceitful scheming. What do? They run that water buffalo to the point of exhaustion. And then, when the animal can hardly walk, the wolves start coming in from all different sides, and they ultimately take down the beast and devour it. Is that nice? No, that's quite nasty. And Jesus called false teachers ravenous wolves, and Paul gives an allusion to that when he's talking about false teachers in a surprise text, Ephesians 4:11 through 16. Context, context, context. What is that little section of Scripture about? Ephesians 1 about the gospel, Ephesians 2 about the gospel, Ephesians 3 about the gospel. Now that we've established that, how now shall the church live? What is the point of the church? The point of the church, the body of believers, is to come together so that we can grow up from being children into the fullness of our head, Jesus Christ. Why? So that the world will see Jesus on earth when they view the church using all of its spiritual gifts in harmony and love with one another, becoming more mature, more Christ-like. They see Jesus when they see the church. That's kind of a big deal. Paul said God gives evangelists and preachers and teachers and people with prophetic utterances, not foretelling, but forthtelling the right verse at the right time in the right situation, so that we can grow up and be mature and not like babies. Most likely your text says some of you are children. The Greek language says that there are people in the church who are babies, and we all are when we are born again. Just like an infant that is born is a little dependent being who needs an awful lot of help and protection and nourishment, so it is in the spiritual realm. You're born again and you're a baby. Paul, recognizing that, then says, so look out. Do not be blown about by every wind of doctrine, because false teachers come along with their deceitful scheming. That is an allusion to our ravenous wolf who schemes against the water buffalo, cleverly exhausting that beast until he can devour the animal. Paul is saying, don't let that happen to you. Don't be blown about by every wind of doctrine. Instead, grow up into the fullness of Christ, which is a big deal, because when we do that together, it shows the world God. That is why I have to confess, I find it shocking that so many evangelicals these days resist pointing out the wolves. I don't think we should do it for sport, condescendingly, as if we somehow have something that we weren't already given. But if we don't want to see babies in the faith devoured, shouldn't we be obedient to the plethora of commands in the New Testament to judge false teachers? This is not just a verse that gives us a warning about false teachers. There is a subject that Jesus addresses once. Hey, don't worry about people who can kill your body, because all they can do is take your life. Instead, fear the one who can take your life and cast you into hell. One time in the New Testament, we see Jesus give an admonition to be aware about death, and that we shouldn't be all that worried about people who can merely kill us, as opposed to having a right standing with God. And yet, how many locks do we have on our home? How many alarm systems? How many times do we make sure that the garage door is shut so a bad guy can't get in? We want to make sure that our bodies and our families' bodies are protected. We actually see Jesus saying, you shouldn't be worried about that so much. Now, I'm not saying throw out common sense. That isn't my point. My point is that Jesus doesn't put a heavy emphasis on protecting yourself. There is a time when he's sending out the disciples, take a short knife so you can defend yourselves. But we don't see a repeated bludgeoning, protect your body, protect your body, protect your body, protect your body. You see very little of that. What do we see hammered home in the New Testament? Protect the truth, protect the church, protect babies in the faith. All over the New Testament. Here are just 3 such verses. From 2 Corinthians 11, they masquerade as servants of righteousness. They are deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. They are wolves in shepherd's clothing. Oh, the elegance of the Bible. Jesus identified them as wolves. They are now again described as wolves. Paul warns, look out for deceitful scheming of wolves. 2 more verses. 2 Corinthians 11, as to their methods, they are deceitful workmen. There it is again, acting by the craftiness of deceitful scheming and using plausible arguments to delude and trap their victims. And finally, Matthew 7, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You'll recognize them by their fruits. It is consistent. It is pounded, thundered home all throughout the New Testament. We must be guarders of the truth, because there are deceitful, scheming wolves. Oh, imagine my surprise that you're still here. Hey, if you'd like more Wretched, because apparently you've got enough free time, would you like this video? Subscribe to this channel, and we will give you Wretched till it's coming out of your nose.